Prepare for takeoff, please.
It's the Shipping Pod. Hello and welcome to the Shipping Pod. I am Tim Dooner, here along with
Ryan Dooley.
Today's podcast is brought to you by Audible.com. Get a free audiobook download and 30-day free trial at www.audibletrial.com/theshippingpod. They have over 180,000 titles to choose from for your iPhone, Android, Kindle, or MP3 player. Ryan, you know what book I just read?
What book did you read?
I just read Sebastian Bach's autobiography, 18 in Life.
Ooh, sounds good.
Well, if I knew about this Audible deal, I would have got that book because it is available through Audible and it is narrated by the one and only Sebastian Bach.
I am absolutely going to take up this Audible deal because, frankly, it's nice when you're driving around in the car to be able to listen to books.
That's true. If you like podcasts, you're going to like audiobooks.
Right in the same wheelhouse, man. That's the way to go. You know what my last book was?
What was it?
Nelson DeMille, The Panther.
Good?
It's a John Corey story. It's always good, man.
I might have to check that out.
You know what? Here's my recommendation. They go in sequence. It's kind of like, the Da Vinci Code, Angels and Demons. There's like a sequence to it. I say go out of sequence.
Okay.
Because they're all individual. Start with The Charm School.
So like Pulp Fiction style it?
Yeah.
Gotcha.
The Charm School is the one. That will hook you, and you will want to read all the rest. You know who else Nelson DeMille wrote? You remember The General's Daughter? With the movie with John Travolta. And there's a lot of famous people in that one, but he's the one that pops off. It's about the girl cadet from West Point there. She's assaulted, and her father's a general.
I'm familiar. I have not seen the movie, but I remember the previews.
It's a Nelson DeMille book.
If either of these books, Sebastian Bach or the Nelson DeMille books, do not interest you, one we could that our readers might like quite a bit is The Box by Mark Levinson.
Ooh.
It's about the container which made the world smaller and the economy bigger. So check that out. Go to audibletrial.com/theshippingpod. See if you want a book.
I have to know. Did you make up that caption, or is that the caption from the book? Making the world smaller. Say it again.
Making the world smaller and the economy bigger.
Did you come up with that, or is that what was written on the book?
No, that's the subtitle on the book.
Oh, I was going to give you all the credit in the world. I'm like, that's good, dude. You should write books.
No, this Mark Levinson, he already got that one covered.
All right. Well, good job, Mark. Well done.
Hey, man, we recorded this one before the Super Bowl last week, right?
Yes, because of a scheduling conflict caused by me, we recorded the last one pre-Super Bowl. So I feel it's only right that we address the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
Because in our podcast, we said, hey, congratulations, way to win, assuming it was going to be a normal win.
Yeah, and if they had lost, I think people may have accused us of jinxing them.
Yeah, for real.
Because it was bad luck.
Well, I tried to hedge our bets a little bit and say, hey, Matt Ryan really did something there, blah, 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 blah. That way I figured, I'm like, maybe people give us a little credit. But no, I think they would have killed us, strung us up, tarred us. Instead, we have the greatest comeback of all time.
I mean, when there was 4 minutes left and Devonta Freeman broke off that 15-yard run, and then Julio caught that crazy pass, you think it's over.
Yeah.
You think the daggers are in, but, Atlanta just did not put the pedal to the metal.
Dude, you'd never see. I am not an ultimate homer when it comes to being a Pats fan, but you would never see Brady let something like that slip through his fingers. And so, more power to him, man. Poor Matty Ice.
Well, their offensive coordinator, he only called 4 runs in the second half.
That was really weird.
Yeah, it was.
They had the lead. Yeah. I'm pretty sure that, I'm not an expert, but I'm pretty sure me and 98.5 and or what's the other one? 98.5 and 93.7 there. I forget what they're called, but all the sports talks radios, we're all in agreement. That was odd.
It was, and it didn't deter the 49ers, though, they went out and they hired their offensive coordinator, Kyle Shanahan.
Yeah.
They are changing their name, though, to the 24 and a halfers. Because they only put half an effort in
Gonna do one half.
They're going to do one half. They've been just running through them, right? They had Chip Kelly in there.
Was that a Tim Dooner original?
That was, man. That's why it was so bad. That's why no one stole it yet. But
That was
hey,
awesome.
he only played one half.
I like it, man.
But that's old news. They've covered this. Did you watch the Grammys this weekend?
I have it queued up. I have not watched it yet. I want to sit down, have myself a beverage, and watch them this evening, actually.
Well, I could have pulled a Grammys on you and turned your mic off and not introduced you, because that is what they did to Lady Gaga and Metallica. They didn't...
What?
They didn't announce Metallica, and they didn't turn on James Hetfield's microphone.
What were they doing? Were they like the opening act, or was it like a...
No, you know how just during the show they'll have
Like, is
they'll
it the
give an
intro
award,
thing?
and then someone will come up and they'll introduce a band. So the person, I believe she's from Orange is the New Black, who introduced them, she said 8-time Grammy Award winners and 4-time Grammy Award winner Lady Gaga. And then they just cut to the band, but she never said Metallica. And then when they're playing, James Hetfield's microphone isn't on.
That's
And
crazy,
he's just sitting
dude.
there like yelling and rocking away like...
Could you hear any of the... Because, I mean, they're loud. Like, when they get at it, they're getting at it loud. Could you hear any, like, rufflings?
No, you couldn't hear his voice at all. What you could hear is the instruments, and then you could hear Lady Gaga come in.
Oh.
And I don't know if the monitors on the stage, if he was coming through the stage monitors and it just wasn't on TV, but he seemed pretty upset when the show was done.
Well, sorry, Metallica.
There was a few others. Speaking of it, when Megadeth won Best Metal Award, they played Metallica instead of Megadeth's music. There was just a ton of
That's
errors at the Grammys this year.
What's going on with it? So, I saw some joke about that on, like, I forget, Jimmy Fallon or somebody like that, who made a comment saying, it goes, yeah, I guess I'll just go home and watch the Grammys, something no one says. And I was like, are the Grammys, like, losing favor? Is it, like, not a big thing anymore?
I think people like them. One a few years ago was one of the highest rated ones in recent memory, I believe. So I think they're there, but, they're industry ego stroke award shows.
I'll tell you one thing. If they bring Neil Patrick Harris in, that's a show anybody will watch. That is the most talented individual in the world today. Have you ever seen his openings for, like, the Tonys and stuff like that? Insane.
Even more talented than Adele?
Yes.
Wow.
He is the ultimate. I don't even know how many threats he is. He's beyond a triple threat, because I've seen the guy now do comedy. He was Doogie Howser, so he was a child star. Now he's a funny adult star, and I think he's a Tony Award winner.
Yeah.
Then he can also dance, sing, do all this nonsense, and also some acrobatic jumps, and he's an accomplished magician, my friend.
Wow. I was not aware of that. But have you seen Lemony Snicket on Netflix?
Yeah, I've seen part of it. I have not seen the whole thing all the way through.
I haven't caught up on that one. I was just recently, I think we've mentioned the show on here. I was catching up with the OA.
Oh, yeah. Good one.
And that is one of those shows that is incredibly flawed and really preposterous and goofy, like the interpretive dance that heals people's injuries and resurrects people.
Spoiler alert. We're just going to tell you how this one goes.
Well, that comes, like, my second episode, it gets in there. I'm not going to tell you the ending or anything.
Oh, I was about to. I was on the verge of being like, oh, man, that sucked.
It's a strange show. Yeah, I don't know if I could recommend it or not, but I did watch the whole thing. I was still interested to see where they were going with this storyline.
I will recommend it. Yeah,
Okay.
I give it the stamp of approval. Worth watching. I'm going to tell people up front, you're going to be a little disappointed at the ending, I believe.
I think so,
but
too.
It's worth the watch. And assuming they get a second season, I'm very interested to see how it moves forward, because they kind of don't really answer most things. They kind of leave it up to, well, it could go one way, could go the other. So I'll be very interested to see if there's a second season.
Okay, I guess I'll recommend it too, because I am going to watch season 2. Just don't get your hopes too high and understand it's a weird, quirky show.
Yeah.
You know what's a good one, though, that just came out is Santa Clarita Diet.
So I was hearing reviews on it. Sounds great. It's got Charlie Day from what do you call it? Always Sunny in Philadelphia. His wife's in it, and he was on TV hawking that, telling me it was great via podcast. I feel like he talks to me when he's on the podcast.
Yeah.
So sounds good.
It's Drew Barrymore and Timothy Olyphant.
Yeah.
Timothy Olyphant, I've always been a fan of his ever since the movie Go. He was the shirtless drug dealer in that.
Yeah.
That's a fantastic film. It's kind of a forgotten gem from the 90s. Like,
Oh,
it
yeah.
came out in 99.
Katie Holmes was in that?
Fantastic movie.
Like a bunch of people from like Party of Five. Who was the guy that played the cop that got naked and tried to trick the guys into selling Amway with him?
Yeah, the character actor guy.
Yeah.
He's in everything.
Armageddon.
He's
he's
always
in
kind of a
everything.
bad guy. Yeah, he's always a creepy kind of bad dude.
And Timothy Olyphant, he always plays like that vein of people. Like, in the movie New Girl with Alicia Cuthbert. He plays the weird kind of pornography producer. And then, I forget what the other one is. It was a more serious one, but he plays kind of like an intermediary drug dealer guy. I mean, he's always in these weird roles.
Yeah.
He's got that kind of face. But he seems like a really nice guy. Like, I'd like to hang out with him in real life.
It's good. It's a good length because it's a comedy, so the episodes are 30 minutes or less.
Oh, good.
Yeah, I don't like long-form comedy. I think the jokes kind of get old, so it's really nice. You can kind of breeze through it, put a couple on Netflix. Next thing you know, the series is done.
Very good.
So I'll recommend that one, too.
And Billions. I'm throwing Billions out again. I mentioned it before. It's coming back. It's back today, actually. Comes on tonight. First episode of the second season.
Well, by the time they hear this, they may have missed it, but maybe they have it DVR'd. But maybe we should move on to why we're really here today.
One thing, the reason I'm here today is to say Happy Valentine's Day, Tim.
Oh my God, I almost forgot. Happy Valentine's Day, Ryan. I would, the bromance continues as our significant others are nowhere to be found. Yet here we sit talking lovingly in microphones, duetting on the podcast.
The significant others have to be out there to make the money so they can keep us in the lifestyle we've grown accustomed, sir.
That's true. At this rate, I'll never get out of your basement.
All right, bud. What do you got? What's next?
Yeah, well, today's show, we're going to cover a little bit of news for you. We're going to stick to topics that we've talked about. We got the Trumpdate, Trumpdate, some interesting things that are going on, and we're going to go through some common shipping terms. Get some of those acronyms and initialisms out of the way, put them down in an easy-to-find place for you, and I think I'm going to start putting a marker in the descriptions, too, for the people who don't want to hear our banter and just want to get to the meat. So you can start looking for those in the description of the episodes.
People will never appreciate how much you do for them, sir.
A different flavor for all seasons, right?
I love
Crime
it.
for all seasons, a different flavor for all tongues, I don't know. There's got to be a saying in there somewhere.
I like the way you went there. A flavor for all tongues. Let's go with that.
Well, my friend, it is time for the Trumpdate.
Trumpdate!
What is going on with our president? Well, he met with a dashing young lad, Justin Trudeau. Have you seen this guy, the Canadian Prime Minister? He really is.
Striking. You know what? He's the Canadian Paul Ryan. I feel like there's a similarity in the looks department.
He's 45, but he looks 27. Mm-hmm. He's a very well-spoken man.
Well-structured. He's well-structured.
Yeah. He.
You know what he is? He's a dapper young man.
He's a very interesting contrast next to Donald Trump. And I have to say something, though. What about Donald Trump's tie game? I mean, he's got the weakest tie game in the show.
Why is it so long?
I don't know.
Okay, here's a question for you. How are you... Okay, I went to the military academy. I was taught the point end of the tie is supposed to touch the top of your belt buckle. How were you taught?
That's the same. And any male fashion device would tell you that as well.
I gotta tell you, is this guy... He's just going rogue, man. He's just trying to set a new trend, right?
Whenever he has that, that red tie on, he looks like a cartoon character that just ate something really hot. And when their tongue gets really long and flops out on the sidewalk with steam emanating from it.
It's a crazy tie game he's got going on, man. That is his hand. Have you seen the clips on his handshake game? He's got that power handshake.
Yeah.
I'd be terrified.
I don't know if I don't know. Sometimes my fight or flight response might come in and I would either want to run away or it would be on between myself and WWE Hall of Famer Donald Trump.
I feel like every once in a while, because, a lot of the gentlemen that he shakes hands with are, not elderly, but older.
Yeah.
So, they're not, we're a couple of big burly guys.
Sure.
If he were to do that, you might not move. Some of these guys, he pulls them a full foot towards him.
He really does.
I feel like if that was happening and I felt like I was going, I'd just go full bro hug. Like, that weird one where the handshake is in between you and the other guy and you just throw the left hand around. Yeah. I'd go full bro hug.
Yeah, bring him in.
Yeah.
Bring him in and see what happens.
Maybe a Robert Kraft smooch on the cheek.
I do want to know what he smells like. I am curious.
I bet you he smells delightful. I bet you he really does have good cologne game, though.
He either has good, but maybe a little too strong. That's awesome. What I'm experiencing. Like a strong, musky...
Yeah. I bet you he likes the ones that are like have an oaky finish.
An oak finish?
Yeah.
Yeah, or like a little sawdust underneath.
Where have we gone?
Yeah. Well, all right, let's get back on track here. So, in our Trump date, he met with Justin Trudeau. Why did he meet with Justin Trudeau? Well, we go back to these NAFTA talks that he's been having. He wanted to assure Justin Trudeau that, I guess, his real opposition is the trade agreement with Mexico. He only wants to make minor changes to what's going on in Canada.
Mm-hmm.
And the leaders, they didn't go over this trade thing, and it's kind of a common thing. There's a lot of talk about trade, and I guess they're just setting the groundwork. But again, we still don't know exactly what that entails. He wants to change minor things. We're not sure. So instead, what they really talked about was curbing drug abuse and helping women start businesses.
Yeah.
So those were kind of positive things.
Yeah, sounds good. Hey, I got to tell you, I'm liking having a positive relationship. I like the stories about our president going out and bridging gaps.
I like that too. I have nothing to say about this.
That.
And it's in Justin Trudeau, opposite side of the political spectrum as Donald Trump. For example, Donald Trump tried to initiate the immigration ban. Justin Trudeau has brought in 40,000 Syrian refugees to Canada. So little, way different side. He's leader of the Liberal Party over there. He's not, but it also seems like Trump is trying to involve Ivanka. She's going to be attending these roundtables to talk about women in business.
Hey, I'm all for it. I'm all for it. I enjoy myself some Ivanka Trump. I'm not going to lie. That one's, I'm a huge fan of his daughters.
Trump had a good quote from this one, too. He said, "We are getting such praise for our stance, and it's a stance of common sense."
Okay.
Interesting. He just powers through. It got a very negative response, I would think, but he just powers through. He's like, nope, this is reality.
Yeah. I don't know if you ever watch, like Real Time with Bill Maher or Last Week Tonight with John Oliver, but they do some pretty interesting coverage of pointing out specific things that there are factual flaws in some of the stuff. But the one thing you got to give Donald Trump is he does not let that stand in his way. He just powers right on through it. So.
I'm gonna keep going.
Hey, it might be the businessman's president there with that one. Is that speculative nature of the market? Think good things and good things will happen. Maybe.
Yeah. Well, we did mention Mexico, and Mexico's a big part of that. He didn't meet with Mexico this week, but there is news out of there.
Yeah.
The export growth out of Mexico is expected to slow to a near halt in 2017. Business investments there are tumbling. Exports out of Mexico account for 1/3 of the country's economic activity, and 80% of those go to the U.S. So in reaction to this, Mexico is doing some, preemptive measures. They're looking to expand trade deals with the EU, and they're opening talks with Argentina and Brazil to ease the dependence on U.S. grain.
Yeah. That's going to have, there's going to be some ripple effects there, man. And I don't want to come into today and be, Debbie Downer.
Yeah.
But part of the tariff and taxation, process is going to drive exactly what you're talking about there, where Mexico and other countries pursue other demand locations so that they can continue to provide their supply and generate revenue. As that demand lessens on us, that means our guys are going to have to start trying to find domestic consumers of these products. And we've been working a long time in this country subsidizing different crops and doing different things. And there was actually an interesting article in the Wall Street Journal about some real fears about us not being able to support the farmlands and having a lot of people go, what were they calling it? The name of the article was Farmer Bust, or the upcoming farm bust impending in 2018. I mean, there's real concerns about the farmers, and a large part of it is because our closest big consumer is going to start looking elsewhere to buy.
Well, as we like to always put a positive spin on something, the good news on exports is the peso is down 16% since last May. So that'll increase some foreign buying, hopefully for Mexico. And a lot of times when we talk about these things, obviously these changes are going to happen. That doesn't mean that we're against them. You can't move one block without moving the other. So in order to get these trade deals to go through, there are going to be changes, and some of them are going to be quite drastic.
Sure.
But at the end of the day, does it make sense to make that drastic of a change with a neighbor like Mexico or a neighbor like Canada? I can see a lot of the reform that might be going on with China making a little bit more sense because they are an economic, I wouldn't say enemy, but there's definitely an opposition there. There's currency manipulation going on there.
Yeah. I mean, I could agree with the currency manipulation portion of it, yeah. I mean, the article, I'm going back a couple of podcasts when I say this, but the article you'd sent me, the Economics Comics, gave a thorough description of some of the things that they do about valuing, the valuation that they apply to the yuan? It's right, yeah, it's the yuan in China. The valuation that they were giving so that they could increase the strength of the dollar so that while they were acquiring capital, they were essentially making their capital more valuable.
Yeah.
So you're right there when you talk trade opposition. So it does make sense, though, like you said. I mean, but I'm sorry, I'm doing kind of a fragmented thought. It makes sense that there definitely has to be some restructuring when it comes to Trans-Pacific partnerships. Not the Trans-Pacific Partnership, but any partnerships with Trans-Pacific nations.
Sure.
However, my only My only real concern, and like I said, not to be a Debbie Downer on it, but my only real concern is that President Trump seems very, very focused on jobs in the sense of manufacturing jobs. There has been a lot of loss of manufacturing jobs over, several decades. However, our farming areas have increased some of their workforce, and they've been able to increase revenues for that because of the exports in the agribusiness. And this applies to trade because that's one of our major, major industries that we have. I mean, cotton out of the south. I mean, lumber out of the north. I mean, commodities, we've got them. Coal, we've got it. The problem that we're going to have, though, is that if we start pushing real hard and try to bring manufacturing jobs back, there's going to be a trade-off, is that we're going to lose some of this agribusiness. And you have to start really looking at the cost-benefit analysis in there.
Well, it's interesting that you bring up jobs, too, because Kellogg's is in the news.
How about them Pop-Tarts, huh, man?
Are you a big Pop-Tart fan?
Huge Pop-Tart fan.
When I was a kid, I used to think there was more jelly in there. Is there less jelly, or am I just bigger now? I'm older.
You know what? I would not be surprised if they reduced the jelly content, because that would be a revenue-generating item. Slightly less jelly, slightly less cost type thing. Yeah, it's like a thin layer now, and I felt like before, maybe in the 80s when I was a kid, when you bit into it, you get like a burst, almost,
a little burst.
Do you toast your Pop-Tarts?
Yeah, you got to.
I go raw.
But I don't eat Pop-Tarts. I mean, if I had to boycott Pop-Tarts, it'd be really easy. I would be like, okay, I can boycott them because I don't eat them.
Yeah. I have been on a Pop-Tart hiatus, but that's been more of a dietary restriction, trying to reduce my sugar intake at breakfast.
Yeah.
But I love me some s'more Pop-Tarts. But hey, I didn't mean to drag you off. Tell me about Kellogg. Tell me about Kellogg, sir.
Well, sure. In the new economy, one of the threats you do see to jobs is automation.
Mm-hmm.
It sort of comes with the territory as computers come along, but e-commerce is overhauling the way that Kellogg's is going to be doing their distribution strategy. They will now be shipping directly to Grocers Warehouse as opposed to their own DCs and then sending out to retail.
Mm-hmm.
So what that means, though, for Kellogg's is that they're closing 39 U.S. distribution centers, which is going to nullify 1,000 jobs.
Yes. However, we don't have any facts and statistics on this because it's kind of an intangible or an unqualifiable or unquantifiable value here, is that you will be adding work to the existing stores there. So, I mean, although it's going to hurt the DCs that go down, there will be, presumably, some kind of a comparable position opening up somewhere else. It's kind of like a finite game. If it's going to take 10 guys to unload a truck, it's going to take 10 guys to unload a truck.
Yeah, they'll just be working, I guess, for Stop and Shop instead of Kellogg's.
Exactly, yes.
But the reason that they're doing this is, as we mentioned, e-commerce. Kellogg said that their customers are increasingly ordering online, which I thought was a little bit interesting.
Have you ever shopped for groceries online?
Well, like Peapod, but I'm pretty sure that just comes from my local Stop and Shop. Yeah. It doesn't come from Kellogg's distribution center.
No. I mean, I don't know. I'll have to check Amazon. Can you buy retail? Can you buy retail food, like non-perishables, on Amazon? You
can. They have Amazon Pantry now.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
But I don't know how widespread it is.
I don't know. Yeah, one way or the other. I think the real silver lining on this is that I really do like to see old school industry, though, joining us in the tech era. I mean, that's the only way they'll continue to survive. So that's a little encouraging. I mean, I know it's painful for the people that work there, but
Well, Paul Norman, the president of Kellogg North America, shed a little bit of light on this. He said, "It makes no sense that we have a lot of resources tied up in our trucks and our own people delivering to stores." So, I mean, maybe it's e-commerce, or I mean, that's what the Wall Street Journal framed it as, but it also looks like he's evaluating the supply chain and saying we're taking more steps than are necessary for us as a company.
Hey, the only way to survive in the supply chain is optimization. You have to make sure that all of your resources and assets are generating some form of revenue or reducing cost. If those aren't your two steps, if those aren't the two things you're looking at in the supply chain, you are taking your first step towards failure.
Well, look at their DCs. They got 39 DCs here, and they have trucks that have to bring these all out to the grocery stores. Mm-hmm. And that's almost a value-added service to these grocery stores when they can just shift the supply chain back to Stop and Shop, and they can have their endpoint at Stop and Shop's DC or Ralph's DC or Shaw's DC.
Well, I mean, we've talked about it in multiple forms of transportation and trade here, is that the entire world has essentially moved towards hub and spoke system. Bigger ships are bringing stuff into main ports, and then it's being distributed onto truck and rail to go to wherever the final destination is. That's a hub and spoke system. It actually, if you look at it from a macro level, what they're doing is Well, what the old method with Kellogg was, you have a hub and spoke system of trade that goes to another smaller hub and spoke system. Instead of doing that, why not just go from one hub and spoke system? It comes in off the boat, lands in ports, well, whatever, Los Angeles, and then goes directly to your end user who has their smaller stores that they need to distribute, depack and distribute. It makes sense to me. Instead of having multiple hub and spoke systems, use the hub and spoke systems that are already in place. I like it. Ryan gives it stamp of approval. Bam!
Yeah, I think that if I was in the Kellogg's boardroom, I would have agreed with the people who signed off on this too. It makes sense.
Yeah. I would say as long as look at grocery stores now. I mean, you can buy anything. I mean, back in the old days, you went to the grocery stores, I feel like there used to be like smaller grocery stores, but you couldn't get everything there.
Yeah.
And now it's like you can go to Costco and BJ's. You could go there and buy all of your perishables, all of your non-perishables, and a nice pair of pants for $20.
We might not be able to get our perishables as easily in the near future if there's too much change with NAFTA down in Mexico.
Oh, yeah. Well, in that case, we'll all be eating, canned beans and stuff. I mean, I got my bunker, so...
Yeah. No more blueberries in winter.
No. Fair point. Although I'd love to I think we're going to find out, though, because like you said, he's doing away with old trade deals, and I heard some quotes from President Trump in regards to Japan where he's saying, but we're going to strengthen other allies. Old allies, new allies. We might find out what Argentinian blueberries taste like. We don't know. We just don't know, sir.
They could be good. I guess my only last thought on that is I'm curious what, on the other end, the grocers got when they heard this announcement, how their reaction was.
You have to assume that there must have been some kind of a cost reduction, and reasonable business practices would be is that to sell this and to sell a change in operation, Kellogg would offer some kind of a percentage reduction to the end user. So my assumption would be they were happy about it because they'll be able to handle their supply chain directly with a cost reduction. Their workers must have liked it because there's going to be some added positions or at least available hours to existing workers. It seems like a win for the end grocer, right? Yeah. I mean, am I glossing over anything? It seems like a win.
It could be. I don't know. I don't know how I would love to see the agreements because this kind of stuff fascinates me. So it would have been really interesting to kind of see how those trades went down. I wish Kellogg had a podcast and let us in on those.
You know what? We need to call Mr. Kellogg. That's what we need to do.
Paul Norman over there. Paul Norman, President of Kellogg North America. If you're listening, send us a little insight. Send us an email.
I want to know. You know what I'm going to look up in our in-between time here is where did the name Kellogg come from? Was it like Bob Kellogg's original company?
It's the last name, yeah.
Yeah?
Yes, it's a family name.
Well, then I want to talk to Bob Kellogg.
I have a real brief one. It's China's exports jumped 7.9% in January. That is usually indicative of a good freight market.
Yes, sir. It's been booming, man.
Yeah, there's not much else for me to say on that one, but that's nice to see. Again, we're trying to bring the positives in here because
China has been up. I mean, it'll be interesting to see the ongoing. I think there's been a lot of talk about increased economic increases here at home in the stock market and a lot of positive speculation by a lot of different businesses, and that has a direct impact on trade. Increased economy has a tendency to run parallel with the increase in trade. So I myself, many people, we've had our differences of opinions when it comes to President Trump, but if this trend were to continue, if all of the talk leads to positive increase in exports and increase in economic status, you know what? I will eat my words, sir.
Well, it may not, because things may change, because Business Insider, just this week, posted out some new data on Maersk. Maersk carries 19% of all containerized freight.
That's 19. Earlier I heard it as 90, and it's 19.
Yeah, that's 19% of all containerized freight. Huge part of the market. But last year, as we were talking about overcapacity, nobody was immune. Mm-hmm. And from 2012 through 2016, revenue has plunged by 29% for Maersk. Now, understand, Maersk is in two businesses. They're in containerized freight, and they're also in oil. Mm-hmm. So they actually got hit twice on this because oil and bunker fuel prices were down as well.
Yeah.
But when we look at this, the revenues of Maersk Line, so that's just the containerized stuff. We're going to ignore the oil stuff. We're not an oil podcast. But the revenues of Maersk Line dropped from $27.4 billion in 2014 to $23.7 billion in 2015, down to $20.7 billion in 2016. That is a 24% drop in, just 2 years?
If you notice, it also syncs up with right when they started talking about segregating the shipping division of the Maersk lines and separating it from all the rest of the holdings that they have, like their terminal holdings as well as all the other business ventures. When they separated that, there were a lot of people from the steamship line side of the business that all said, like, well, that's going to be a very unfortunate balance sheet when they don't have the other businesses to kind of soften the blow.
Yeah.
And so I am not tremendously surprised. I'm surprised by the amount of a hit they took, but I'm not necessarily surprised. We all kind of, all of us steamship guys kind of assumed it was going to look pretty bad.
Well, they have said that right now they're expecting container growth for this year to be 2 to 4%, and they're also seeing rates go back up. The market is going back up. The price wars have bottomed out, so there is some revenue coming back into these. But a trade war with China could be disastrous. If there was a 10% export on tariffs, some economists are saying that exports to the U.S. could plunge by as much as 25%.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't give a timeline for that, how long that would take, but that's going to do nothing to help the containerized freight industry.
You and I were talking right before we came online. We talked a little bit about it, but just that 25% I would envision, and this is pure speculation, but from my opinion, I think that 25% would move pretty quick. It wouldn't be, drops 25% over 4 years. It'd be like it drops 25% over 1 to 2 years, because it's one of those things, Americans like to buy what they like to buy. If it starts to become difficult or somehow, there are some restrictions imposed on importing goods, they will purchase them here in America. Once you start purchasing them here in America, there's less demand on the import. The imports will start going elsewhere, or they will just stop coming, period. So I think that drop, and I mentioned this and I touched on it a little bit off air, is that a lot like Mexico, China has already reached out and started trying to firm up their trade interests with Europe, as well as South America, Australia. I mean, all the other places that they like to do business with, they're already firming those up. So if we take a dip and we all of a sudden knock off 13%, it would be pretty easy for them to say, well, we'll take the other 13% and we'll send it someplace else anyways. There's your 25% decrease here in America. Not really a problem as long as there's an American alternative. If there's a domestic alternative, no big deal. We deal with it. If there isn't, now that's when all of a sudden anything that we import that, I can't think of an example off the top of my head, but anything we import that we don't have an American alternative right now will become very pricey. And all of a sudden it'll be like Amazon from Australia. But I digress. Yeah. Hey, you know who else is having a little bit of trouble?
Who?
Hyundai Merchant Marine Company, or Hyundai, as I say it.
Aren't we all?
They had they swung to a $38.7 million loss last year as revenue declined. They're Korean-based. They're the alternative. Hanjin went out of business last year, so the country of South Korea left with two major lines, I should say, and things are not exactly rosy. We all had an idea that we were like, well, one of them will go down, and the other one will just pick up all the remaining slack out of Korea, and it'll be very good for them. We have not seen the turnaround yet, but Hyundai is also being eyed up by Maersk, as some of the papers are reporting. So they're entering into the alliance there with Maersk and MSC. Hyundai is also part of that alliance. So
was that for 2016? Those numbers you were giving me?
Yes, sir. That is for last year. Yep, 2016.
Okay. Mm-hmm. So potentially it could pick up.
Oh yeah,
being this year. But did they have a bad fourth quarter or something?
I don't have the breakdown of the quarters. I do know that they had not yet entered into the alliance there with Maersk and MSC yet. So I would imagine that the fourth quarter, like all the rest of the steamship lines, slightly better simply because of the fact that you run into Christmas as well as lack of Hanjin created more opportunity there. So I would speculate that their fourth quarter was better than the others, but the overall year as a whole is the only one I have the fact on.
Yeah. I mean, everyone seemed to get nailed in 2016, so...
Heck yeah.
So I don't know how to really put those numbers, because when you lay them all out, everyone's losing millions and, if not billions of dollars.
Absolutely. Hey, you want to know... if we want to end on a positive, here's one for you. Have you heard of the company DSV?
I have heard of the company DSV.
There is reports that it's resumed looking for acquisitions. They saw a big jump after they integrated UTI worldwide.
Sure.
When they picked up UTI, they saw huge benefits to that. Really good outfit. And word on the street, and I say word on the street, I got this from the Wall Street Journal, so not just a guy that I talked to at Tedeschi's, but according to the Wall Street Journal, they are already back out there looking for their next acquisition. So if you're a mid-sized forwarder, maybe you need to talk to DSV. They might have something for you.
Yeah, well, they're based in Denmark, and I think that UTI, picking them up, just helped give an even bigger footprint in the U.S. market, and yeah, good on them.
Hey, I'm all for it. Growth by... Oh, I don't know what the heck that was. Growth by acquisition. I guess when I lean too far forward there, I drop out of mic range.
Yeah. Well, we got you back now.
I found my way home. Don't worry, NTM.
Ryan,
What do you got?
we have to... Well, we feel the need to sometimes explain a lot of initialisms and acronyms on this show.
Mm-hmm. And for anyone who wasn't listening last week, what's the difference between an initialism and an acronym?
An initialism is FBI. An acronym is SCUBA. An acronym is a word you pronounce.
Very good. I like that. As is laser.
It is. Well, word, not a word. It's an abbreviation that you would pronounce.
Interesting. We learned last week that laser is an acronym.
Yeah.
I did not know that.
So this particular segment is going to be for, I guess, newer members of the industry or people who just don't work on certain sides, because we're going to cover some air and ocean terms. Just kind of the basics, right?
Yeah. We should have like an audio clip that goes in there. It just goes, "Hey, rookie, listen up."
Hey, rookie, this one's for you, you greenhorn. Let me grab you by that greenhorn and sharpen it up. I'm a tempest in a tea kettle.
Fantastic. Okay, what do you got? What do you want to talk about? What do you want to start?
Let's start. Let's categorize these a little bit too, so that it's not a bunch of abstractions or initialisms. We'll start with air and ocean freight abbreviations.
Mm-hmm.
Let's start off with the first thing you're really going to need to know when you contact a forwarder or steamship line. Those are your dimensions, Ryan.
What? I'm sorry?
Your dimensions. You're going to have to let a steamship line or a forwarder know the dimensions of your freight.
Oh, yes, indeed.
In order to get a quote, right?
I thought you were asking me my dimensions, and I was like, I don't know how to answer that, Tim.
I'll break out that Taylor's tape. This Valentine's Day will start getting really weird.
Indeed. So you want to know, the first thing they're going to ask you is, what are the dimensions?
What are the dimensions? And they're usually going to want to know, well, they're always going to want to know how many CBM. And your CBM is your cubic meters. That is arranged as height, width, and length.
Indeed, sir. Is there anything, I was trying to think, the cubic meters, volumetric versus weight-based.
Like on air freight, for example?
Indeed. I don't know where I was going with that. I had a question about it, and I totally lost it because I was trying to look up the next thing.
Are you asking me for the calculation?
Yes. Do you know it?
There's some pretty easy resources online for having it done for you.
Indeed.
Off the top of my head, I don't know the exact calculation. I have a cheat sheet on paper, which I can whip it out, but it's one of those things where when I'm not looking at it, I'm at a loss on the dimensional freight.
This is where I was going with that, is that when you were saying the CBMs, your cubic meters.
Yeah.
Is that in regards to LCL, LTL, and air freight. And as we learned last week and the week prior to, LCL being less than container load, LTL being less than truckload.
We'll get to those, but right now, but the CBMs, they do come into play because they will dictate what you need.
Yes. And the one I was trying to look for here that I was blanking on was the dimensional weight. Because as you say, they'll be looking for your dimensions. They're going to be basing the outcome of that CBM, whether it's going to be a gross weight or a dimensional weight. That was all. I was just trying to add that. Took me a long time to get my thought together, but I got there.
We're only on the first one, folks.
I know. Stumbling through these things, don't mind me.
It's all right.
If you can't tell, my expertise lies in the ocean.
Well, the next thing they're going to ask you is your kilograms, correct?
Indeed.
They're going to need to know the weight.
Absolutely. Dimensions and weight, sir.
So KG, that's the abbreviation you're going to find for that one.
Kevin Garnett.
Yeah.
Or kilograms, whatever applies.
well, the last one too is your WM, which is the weight or measure. Billing will be based on whichever is greater.
And that's why, and I apologize. I kind of butched you up here a little bit when I started jumping to the weight and measure. That was where I was going with this.
Okay.
Like, okay, cubic meters will be assigned, and then you'll give them the weight, and then between that, you'll come up with your volumetric or your gross weight charge. Yeah. And that's exactly what you're talking about, so don't mind me taking you around in circles, bro.
Oh, it's all right. In terms of dimensions, though, can you think of any other abbreviation that I might be missing here?
I feel like based on the look on your face, there is one that you're missing that I'm looking for, but I can't think of one. As far as you have your length, width, height, you need to know pounds or kilograms. One way or the other, it's going to be converted to kilograms.
Mm-hmm.
And then based on that, you have your cubic meters versus your weight. That's it for air freight, right? Am I mean, You do have the height restriction for the aircraft that you carry on, but I don't think that's what you're looking for.
Well, I mean, this is air and ocean.
Okay.
So.
No, I can't think of one off the top of my head. Is there one that I'm completely forgetting? Do you have one?
Not that I can think of, but if you can think of it, you can reach us at theshippingpod@gmail.com, or you can tweet to us at theshippingpod. Follow us on Instagram at theshippingpod.
Ooh.
Yeah.
I enjoy our Instagram. I gotta tell you, you got an eye for the photos, my friend.
Oh, yeah?
An eye for the streets of Boston and the shipping world, my friend.
Thanks. I take all those myself.
Hey!
I have a large collection. You know what? The last thing, though, for the CBM, if you're using CBM, you want to make sure you get the final measures on there. You don't want to get, you don't want to give your forwarder, your broker, the CBMs of a single product.
Ah, yes.
And if it's going to be skidded or how it's going to be wrapped, how it's going to be put into the container can make quite a bit of difference. So new forwarders, I think, make that mistake a lot. They get their bill.
Yes.
It's higher than they expected because the freight took up a lot more room than they were anticipating. They're right.
Yeah. No, that nails it. It's important to remember it's all based on everything in this industry is all essentially based on overalls. So it's your overall dimensions, your overall weights. It's a tough thing when people when I was working in my past lifetime in the air freight, occasionally we would get customers that would come in with 10 small boxes, of varying weights, of varying sizes. Well, when we palletized everything, we gave them the overall charge, and that didn't necessarily add up to what they were envisioning of how things were stacked. And so it's just important to remember that things are based on the overall weights and overall dimensions of everything, including the pallet or whatever stacking device it needs to go on.
And if there's two numbers, as we mentioned with the weight measurement, you're always paying the higher one.
Yes, sir.
So just keep that in mind. Ask your broker if there's any discrepancy, so you can kind of figure out your landed cost a little bit ahead of time. But especially new forwarders, that's something you want to look out for. So you've contacted your broker. You've given them the dimensions. They got your quote. You're ready to book your freight. You're going to need a few things: AWB or HAWB. That's your airway bill or your house airway bill.
Ooh, what's the difference
between an airway bill and a house airway bill?
Yes.
Well, sometimes they're used interchangeably.
Indeed. Versus the MAWB, or Master Airway Bill?
Correct.
Ah. I do always get those confused, actually. This is something that I have to make I actually have a Post-it note that I used to put on my computer so I could keep them both straight. For some reason, I had true trouble keeping House and Master Airway Bills segregated in my mind.
Well, what they are is a waybill is a document issued by a carrier or forwarder giving details and instructions relating to the shipment.
Mm-hmm. It's actually a contract. The back of the waybill is the master contract, and that is the go-to document in lieu of any other contract signed or agreements in place.
Yeah, it's your plane ticket for your freight, or
Perfect.
your ocean ticket.
Beautiful analogy. That is a good analogy right there, dude.
It's kind of what it looks like too, because it's gonna have your house airway bill numbers on there. It's gonna have an estimated time of departure. It's gonna have the weight. It's gonna have what the shipment is. It's gonna have the port of arrival. It's gonna have a number of things. It's gonna have the consignee. We'll get to what a consignee is.
Absolutely, sir.
So you also have a bill of lading. That's a document issued by the carrier to the shipper as a contract of carriage. It must be presented at destination in order for the goods to be released. It is a document of title for the goods. So as you mentioned, it's the contract.
Mm-hmm. Now, this is one that I'll ask you because you have a little more experience in the air side of things. I'm not sure if you know this off the top of your head. So in the ocean side of the business, when you have a bill of lading, you have the original bills of lading. But typically when you're talking about things, you're talking about moving from, say, China to the U.S. You can be set up for a Telex express release of a Seaway bill, which is essentially the same thing, airway bill, Seaway bill. If you're not set up for that, you're required to provide the original bills of lading at destination so that the cargo can be released to the person picking up the cargo. Is it the same thing in the airway bill world?
It can be. For example, I used to deal with perishable air freight shipments quite a bit when I was with another forwarder, and you would have a couple kinds of releases. The good one was when you got a 1C, and a 1C everything went perfectly through AMS. Everything was exact, and it got released.
Does 1C stand for anything, or is that just a classification? Is it just like literally one Charlie, like one the letter C?
Yeah, it's the number 1 and the letter C, and it just shows up when you run an AMS report. When you run the airway bill in an AMS report, it'll show you if it's released. Mm-hmm. That doesn't always happen, though. there can also be entry docs required. When entry docs are required, you have to print out an entry packet with the airway bill, commercial invoice, packing list, and any write-ups or notations that they need, FDA.
Sure.
You have to bring that to customs and get it stamped off.
Okay.
To get the release. And then customs is the only one who can put the release into the system.
Very good. I got to tell you, listeners, this is a learning experience for Ryan as well. This is a refresher on the air freight journey.
That'll happen quite a bit. I used to have to drive to Logan on weekends for
pick up docs.
Well, no, the forwarder I was with, we would have about 12 shipments that would come in on Saturdays and 8 that would come in on Sundays. So I'd have to come in both days and prepare all the entry packets and the documents and everything. And there would always be 4 or 5 that would go entry docs required. So you'd have to drive to Logan over there to, Iceland Air or whomever to get it signed off.
We kind of glossed, and I don't know. Were you going to speak to the difference between master versus house airway bill?
Go for it.
So when you look at things, you have 2 types of shipments there with the direct shipments versus consolidated shipments. So the master airway bill is if everything moving in one shipment is all on the same airway bill. If you go to a consolidator where you essentially take I worked for Kintetsu World Express. Did Ocean Air do air consolidation?
Sure, absolutely.
So any one of your air consolidation people, if you have a smaller shipment, you can ship on the one master airway bill with multiple house airway bills underneath it. So each shipment that you send will be under a house airway bill, and then whoever the next person is, another house airway bill. However, when it goes to the airline, it will be sent under Ocean Air or Kintetsu's master airway bill. Did I get that correct?
Yeah, basically.
Okay, excellent. I want to make sure because I'm deferring to you, sir. I want to make sure that I don't lead our people astray.
Well, one thing that used to drive me nuts is whenever there would be split shipments. So what happens is the air shipments, sometimes they issue an airway bill, and even to start out in AMS, they'll put 200 containers if you have 200 containers on the airway bill. Mm-hmm. But it might only take off with 180. So then you have 20 remaining. So when you're doing an entry on something like that, you have to wait for the rest of it to be put into AMS so you can get the numbers that you need.
Oh.
And that can cause quite a delay to actually close out the entry.
I could see that.
They were the bane of my weekends.
Oh, rough days, man.
DO. When your cargo gets here, you're going to need a delivery order. That's all that is. A delivery order is just instructions that you send to a trucking company. Mm-hmm. Or whomever's picking up your freight to bring it to wherever you need it to go.
I am surprised that's not a more formalized process. I learned in a previous lifetime when working for a 3PL that a DO can literally just be typed up on a blank piece of paper at whatever the company's location. You hand it to a trucker and he goes, and that's what he uses to pick up the goods. It was very informal, had specific information on it, but it was informal. There wasn't like an actual government issue document that had to. Bills of lading tend to have a very structured way to them. You have the shipper box, the notify box, etc., etc. But the DO seemed a little roughshod to me.
Ryan, when do you send your DO to the trucker?
Ooh. I'm going to say 24 hours in advance.
No.
I don't know when.
Never. When your shipment clears customs.
Oh, good point. Yeah,
and
you
I'll
don't
tell
want to
you,
send a driver.
because things like entry docs required can happen, especially in the air freight world. Things move fast and rapidly. Mm. The second... in my experience with truckers, the second they get that DO, they send a trucker to the port.
Yeah.
And your freight may not be ready, and you're going to get a bill back if they show up there and the freight's not good. You're at least going to get some angry phone calls.
Yeah. No, that's a good point. I really should have remembered that, but I did not. As soon as you asked that question, I'm like, oh, good question.
Yeah. Let's see here. Oh, we mentioned lithium-ion batteries last week. That brings us to MSDS.
Ooh.
That is the Material Safety Data Sheet.
What's on that sheet, Tim?
That provides procedures for handling dangerous goods in a safe manner. It will confirm how the goods can travel and if they can be loaded with other dangerous goods.
Mm-hmm. MSDS, that is the bane of my existence. It's great if you have people that consistently ship hazardous goods, but if you have people that are either sporadic or first-time ones, that is one of the hardest documents to pull from a customer.
It really is.
It is. And it's an absolute requirement. It's not even, oh, we're doing this because it makes our lives better. It's one of those things where I'm like, nah, they will not take this cargo without that MSDS.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, even worse is a lot, like with lithium ion, you'd have to send it out of Hong Kong because it couldn't go to like Shenzhen because of the regulations.
Yeah.
But no forwarder would pick it up unless they already had the MSDS. They're not going to bring it to Hong Kong without it, but it's very hard sometimes to convey that to importers, especially newer importers or importers who are not familiar with this, and they get very headstrong sometimes about, we'll just put it on the ship, let it fly.
Yeah. I got to tell you, the most common request you get is like, well, no, it's. I know it's listed as hazardous, but it's really not dangerous, so you guys are okay to fly. It's like, that is not a legal authorization, my friend. Just because you think it's not hazardous, or you think it's not dangerous, does not have anything to do with whether or not it's hazardous.
Yeah. I mean, this stuff is, you're not ordering off Amazon, people. You have to, there's regulations here. There's a gigantic book of customs regulations here, multiple books.
Oh, it's yeah. The CFR 49 is pretty intense when it comes to regulations on that stuff.
Yeah. And another...
CFR standing for Code of Federal Regulations.
Why are you going to jump ahead of me here, man?
Oh, my bad.
SLI. We're doing a thing on abbreviations. We will get to that one.
I didn't want to pepper things in, yeah.
SLI. That's the shipper's letter of instruction.
Yes, it is.
That's a document filed by the shipper providing all the details related to the shipment, shipper, and consignee, dimensions, weight, description of the goods, and shipping terms.
I have nothing to say to that.
No, that's just what it is. I'm letting people know. But when we say shipping terms, we're not going to do them this episode because Incoterms deserves its own episode.
Ooh.
We're going to have to break out the knife and the fork with that, put a bib on, and sit down at the table.
Incoterm. Is that just a word? Is that an acronym? Or is that an initialism?
An Incoterm is the terms that are used for shipping. It's basically your contract between the seller of your goods, the consignee, and the seller of the goods.
Indeed. Incoterm itself standing for International Commerce Term. How about that?
Where's the O come in?
Commerce. IN for international, CO for commerce.
Oh.
Term for term.
Uh-huh. That's like subox. That's not an initialism.
Yeah, I don't know what
That's that's just an abbreviation.
It's just a thing people do.
Shortening, man. You're tracking these words on me.
That's how we roll.
But Incoterms, they dictate everything about your shipment.
They do.
They can be... It dictates whether, if you buy from a supplier in China, if you bought something DDP, we won't go into them, but there's a term DDP. If you bought it from them, that means you would pay one amount for your goods, and then the shipper would handle everything else. They would pick the forwarder, they would pick the truck driver over to you, they would pick whoever brokers and clears your freight.
Mm-hmm.
It's the one that gives you the least amount of control, least amount of cost visibility.
Yes.
On the other end of the spectrum, you have things like X-Works or FOB. FOB means you just buy the goods from the person, they get it to the port, you take care of the rest.
It's essentially the terms that instruct you on how billing is to work. And in billing also lies liability.
Yeah.
So it's essentially the agreement of how liability and billing is going to be conducted throughout the terms.
Sure. And mostly liability, though. That's the big factor. And when you start getting into insurance, that is what you're going to need.
Indeed, sir. Indeed.
People and places. You got your ATD or ATA. That's your actual time of departure, actual time of arrival. Very self-explanatory.
Mm-hmm.
You have your ATF. That is not alcohol, tobacco, and firearms. That's approved transitional facility. That's a site. It's an accredited site for a person to receive and inspect import containers.
Mm-hmm.
We got the CFS. Have we mentioned those yet? Those are container freight stations.
We have not mentioned those.
CFS is just where your cargo goes to, correct?
I have no idea.
The CFS, that's like when it goes to the port. It's the container freight station.
I've never heard that one before.
Really?
Yeah, that's a complete new one for me.
I guess we hear it more on the brokerage side because we have to know where the goods are.
Yeah. Wow. Learn something new every day, huh?
CNE, that's your consignee.
That one I have heard.
Yeah, the consignee is the buyer.
Indeed.
You have the CNOR, it's a consignor, that's the seller.
Consignor.
Yep. You know what a CY is? That's your container yard.
Yes.
Those are just storage yards, right? Where containers go.
And that's kind of what... So would the CY be the ocean equivalent of the CFS?
A CFS is an ocean yard. It's a freight yard.
Oh, I don't know. I've never
heard that.
It's
It's a container freight handling depot.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, good thing about being on this podcast is sometimes you educate yourself.
There you go. Learning.
ETA, ETD, estimated time of departure, estimated time of arrival. Again, self-explanatory. Yeah. Another one, though, IATA.
Whoa, before we get out of the E's, what about EDI? Very common term. Oh, sorry. I thought you were going to say... My bad. I thought you had it, dude. That's the electronic data interchange. Or, excuse me, interface. Yeah, interchange. Electronic data interchange. If you're transmitting data, it will be EDI'd from one computer to the next, from one station to the next.
Yeah. Actually, I just read that Yang Ming suspended their EDI in preparation for joining the Alliance.
I don't know about that, actually, to tell you the truth.
Just in the news, my friend.
I was going to say, I have not heard it, but I've been on the road a little bit, so there's a fair to middling chance that I'm a little behind on that. But I'm assuming that's pending?
It's current. It's for April bookings.
Okay, good. Yeah. Okay, yeah. Then that's that. Okay, then I'm with you then.
Yeah. So it's just tentative schedule.
I'm like, if not, we need to end this, and I need to get on the phone immediately.
Yeah. No, not till April.
Very good.
All right, but we were going with IATA, right? That's the International Air Transport Association. That's an international organization of airlines that regulate conditions of operation, safety, schedules, and pricing for international air transport. And something that, if you do enough air freight, you'll learn is an IATA code.
Indeed.
That is your airport code.
Hey, did you know the IATA headquarters is in Geneva, Switzerland?
I did not. Have you been?
I have not. But I did a book report on Switzerland.
Wow.
In the 5th grade. I feel very well versed.
Has anything changed since then?
I don't think so. I think they're good. I love their rolls. Swiss rolls. Fantastic.
Right, and this is one that we're well familiar with, and anybody who's an importer has probably used a time or two, is an NVOCC. That is a non-vessel operating common carrier. Oh. What that means is it's someone who acts like a shipping line, but doesn't own its own vessel. So it's a non-asset-based entity that can issue those bill of ladings that we talked about. Mm-hmm. They can issue those contracts, and they can book freight.
The NVO world, that has been a booming industry here for the last several decades there, essentially being a third party and holding contracts with many steamship lines, but operating as a steamship line for, typically smaller to mid-sized, underlying BCOs, but just people that own cargo. But I got to tell you, here's my prediction there is I think the NVO market is going to suffer in near years only because it has become extremely saturated. So it's kind of getting to the top of the mountain and it's going to start seeing a slight decline. Not in the need for it, but there will just be a reduction in the amount of NVOs that are out there. Because, there's like over 350 NVOs in the greater Boston area alone.
Yeah, it's a huge market. A lot of them, the ones that are doing the best business, are diversified or they're specialized. Mm-hmm. They're dealing strictly with pharma or they're dealing strictly with perishables. Especially perishables. It's hard to find a really good perishable broker with 24-hour FDA support.
Yeah.
I worked for one of them. And when I've tried to sell perishables with a lot of other companies, it's hard to do unless you have that infrastructure there.
Yeah. Well, people do not want to tango. People do not want to even risk possible problems when it comes to perishables. That window is so small, and bringing a perishable in incorrectly can cost you an entire shipment. It can cost you the entire value of the shipment. That's stick with the ones there, people.
Yeah,
that's my idea.
You need dedicated staff and dedicated support to really go with the perishable systems.
Indeed, sir. Indeed.
We got the POL and the POD. That's just your port of lading, port of discharge. When you say port of loading, that is where the freight is put on the vessel.
Very good, sir.
Your first port. Port of discharge is where it goes to.
I think this is one of those ones, too, is there's also POD is used as proof of delivery.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's kind of one of those ones where I'm like, we couldn't have come up. Maybe POD and then PROD.
Yeah.
I don't know. Something. We could have come up with something there.
Well, as we go to a couple more, we'll see that there's definitely crossover and commonality of terms that can be confusing. And also there's a lot of terms that people use incorrectly. It's sort of institutionalized within certain companies that they just completely use it wrong. Like break bulk, for example. Mm-hmm. I know of one company that I was with. Break bulk is freight that doesn't fit in a container, correct?
Correct.
However, they use break bulk for LCL shipments, which is like the exact opposite.
Yeah. It's definition the way as I was taught back in the maritime academies is that you have bulk.
Yeah.
Things that are large, grain, ore, iron, whatever. break bulk being things that are large, but they are broken up into individual, sections. So it could be anything from large amounts of those quantities that are being broken out and segregated into different areas, or it could be something like a John Deere tractor. I mean, not necessarily 20 packages.
We're going to jump into some surcharges now. These are what you're going to see on your bill. Sometimes whomever's quoting you will either break these all out or they'll bury them within the quote. AMS is the first one here, which in terms of surcharges, we're talking about American Maritime Security, not Automated Manifest System. Which can cause a little bit of confusion. I bet there's quite a few people who have looked at their freight bill, saw AMS as a surcharge, and was like,
damn, this broker or damn this order, they're charging me an AMS fee? Why is it costing me an AMS now?
They're ripping me off. But no, it's American Maritime Security. It's the compliance costs associated with U.S. border security laws and procedures. We get the BAF on there. That's the bunker adjustment factor. That's a fuel surcharge on a shipping vessel.
I have often wondered where the term bunkers came from. Like, why it's not just fuel. Like, I don't know what bunker.
Does bunkers refer to stored fuel?
I just know it. I know it as the general term for fuel. I don't know if that means... I don't know. That's a good question. That's something that we'll definitely have to look up.
Ryan, I just know what these things stand for. I don't know what all of them actually mean. But yeah, let's look up...
When I look at you, I expect answers to any and all questions that I have.
Well, this is more your side, the bunker adjustment fee.
I know, that's what I'm saying. The bunker adjustment, all it is, the fuel cost. That's all it is.
Yeah.
You get it. To tell you the truth, I'm like, they don't even actually, not all the places actually use the same term as bunkers. I worked for one that was EFAF, which was like extra fuel adjustment factor. I mean, they just have multiple terms when it comes to fuel on the shipping side.
Yeah, they'll play games because sometimes they'll go to contract term and they'll be in a room with the logistics head and they'll say,
I'm not paying any bunker charges.
So the sales guy writes that down and then they go back and they do their RFQ and they just put that charge under a different name.
No problem.
Yeah.
We're going to waive the bunker.
You will not see anything.
It's funny the way that rate went up exactly the same amount, though.
You will not see BAF on there. I'll just move the walnut under another cup.
Exactly.
You get your CAF. That's your currency adjustment factor. That's supposed to cover the charge of any currency fluctuation.
Yes. It's actually it's becoming less and less prevalent and problematic simply because rates aren't being held out for validity past a month or 2 months in the ocean business. So it's been unnecessary for anyone to even apply any kind of CAF to it because essentially we're like, yeah, we can eat whatever changes in the next month, but because we're going to change the rate anyways. So
yeah.
When
you combine your CAF and your BAF, that's a CABAF.
I've never seen that one.
Yeah. So maybe that guy says you don't want to see BAF on there. He's like, okay, well, I'll give you some CABAF then.
Currency adjustment, bunker adjustment factor.
That's just them in. Well, speaking of factors, we get the FAF, the fuel adjustment factor. That's fuel charges on road units or on air freight.
Yeah. FAF.
Got GRI. We talked quite a bit about that last week.
The general rate increase?
It is a general rate increase.
It's the only thing that can keep neon from your house in the Chinese New Year.
The GRI?
Yeah, the GRI scares them away.
Red House, fireworks, and a GRI.
Nothing's going to get to your house if that's your status.
Sure isn't. We get the GRIs too. What general rate increase? Their notice is put out, as we mentioned in the last episode. Their notice is put out by the steamship lines to let people know
30 days in advance.
Yeah, your containers are going up $300, $400, whatever it may be.
Mm-hmm.
And as we also said, fear not, because sometimes they don't even stick.
Yeah, very true. It's a fair to reasonable assumption that if we say $300 increase, probably won't be $300.
We get the ISPS. That's International Ship and Port Facility Security. That just another surcharge to cover security handling at origin and destination ports and depots.
Mm-hmm.
I have never written these charges out myself. They always come to me quoted.
Yes.
From overseas. Is something like the ISPS, is that like to use another abbreviation, a BS charge?
No, that's actually a charge that comes directly from the terminal. It's actually only U.S. based.
Okay.
And so it's the security charge that was implemented after 9/11 as part of the Homeland Security Act. So it's actually a real charge that comes through. It's not something that there are some charges, as we used to refer to them back in my old days, as revenue charges, where it's just an administrative cost for the company, so it can be waived. That one typically can't be waived. You can roll it in because it's pretty static that it's on every single box. So it's easy to roll in on ocean freight and it's easy to roll in on air freight, but it's not something that just gets applied.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, because it is a little, I think some people prefer the roll-in. Some people like to see these all broken out.
Mm-hmm.
Some people get really shocked when they see 9 surcharges on their freight bill.
Yeah.
Like, what are all of these things? And that's what we're trying to explain what they are to you right here.
I tell you, the funny thing about different ways that different companies quote, when you roll everything in there, there is a somewhat mistaken idea that you're trying to slip something by a customer. And a lot of customers will ask you to break them all out. And once you've broken them all out, they determine that they're completely ridiculous. If you wait a little while and the next time you quote the customer, you give them the same rate with it all broken out, a lot of the times there's no kickback because all of the charges individually are relatively small and all of the charges are applicable. They're all real charges. It's just something about the roll-in makes the whole rate look bigger than when someone else comes out and gives you, like, take Company A brings you all rolled in for $1,000. Company B comes in and gives it to you $800 subject to da-da-da-da-da-da. It's just a style and preference. Me personally, if I was a MVO and I was going to a steamship line or an air freight, I'd be, just give it to me all rolled in. I want super all-in rate, as we like to say. I want all charges. Tell me everything, put it all in one. And then if down the road there's any kind of a discrepancy, then I'll get it broken out. But I think that's the best way to do it because it's the only way to price. If you leave it up to yourself, you don't know it as well as the steamship line or the air freight line actually knows what they're applying. So it's always, in my opinion, it's better to have it all rolled in.
Yeah. Well, because when you line them all out, the quote starts getting longer than a CVS receipt, but different preferences, different people.
Why is that receipt so long?
I don't know. Now they want to email you. So not only do they try and hand you this big receipt, they're asking if they can email it to you too. And I'm like, I don't want to give them my email address.
Do you ever tell them no thank you on the receipt and they won't throw it away for you? They're like, no, you have to take this.
Yeah, they look at you like you're crazy. And I didn't know this because I never looked at them. But my wife was looking at me like I'm crazy too because she's like, those like $3 coupon on there. Like $3, you're throwing $3 away. So then I started trying to save them and I would like keep them in my car glove box.
Yep.
And then my car glove box just got like filled with trash and expired CVS receipts.
I like to cut out the coupons and just run around and like make it rain coupons.
Yeah, I'm not good with coupons.
Me neither. I've never used a coupon, I don't think. But hey, what else you got, bud?
We got some transportation modes. We got the TEU.
The 20-foot equivalent unit?
That's your standard 20-foot shipping container. That's what people mean by a TEU.
I've put my notes down and now I'm using this as a quiz.
We got the FEU.
That's 40-foot?
That is a 40-foot. You know what the FR is?
Freight rate?
Flat racks.
Flat rack!
Got your HC. So sometimes when you go for a quote, you're quoting for a 40. They're going to give you a quote for a 40 and a 40 HC. But Ryan, what is a 40 HC?
40 HC is a high cube, which is a slightly higher 40-footer than, say, a 40-foot, depending on what company you're working for. It's either a 40-foot STD, standard, or a 40-foot DC, standard. So, and let me see if I have do you have the dimensions in front of you? I can take a stab at that.
I don't have the dims, but the benefit of a high cube versus a regular one is you just get a few more CBM, correct?
Yes. All it is that the length and the width are the same, and the height is slightly higher. I believe it's length. So the length is obviously 40. The width is 8 feet, so it's 8 feet by 9'6", I believe, with a high cube. I believe I'd have to look it up to get the specifics, but you get a couple inches. I want to say you get like 7 inches higher on a high cube than you do on a standard.
I haven't done a lot of this kind of container, but have you done an OT, which is an open top container?
Yes. It's good for, it's big in the bulk industry. Say you have heavy products that need to be lowered in by a crane.
Yeah.
It's just a regular either 20 or 40 footer where the ceiling is cut off.
So nothing can go on top of it?
No, well, okay. When you load that up, everything loaded on top of a container is always loaded by the corner castings. And that's the steel holes that you'll see on the top of them. So you can load it the same way you can load a regular 40-footer. Any other closed 40-footer, you can load on top of a 40-foot open top. However, traditionally, it's not done only because typically people get a 40-foot open top because it's slightly out of gauge cargo, meaning it's slightly taller.
So we're going to get to out of gauge, but so open top simply just refers to the open top container. Out of gauge, I'll ask you a little bit more on in a second when we get there. But
sure.
We got BB, that's your break bulk. We mentioned that one a little bit earlier, and how sometimes some companies will use break bulk in a number of different ways, but the actual correct usage of break bulk is a large shipment that's usually too big for a shipping container that can be loaded directly onto a ship.
Very good. Such as your big track wheel type John Deere tractors. That's the example I like to use.
I was going to ask you, what does break bulk look like on a ship, and where does it go?
Depends on what kind of stuff that you're talking about, because you can use break bulk ships, which will carry multiple different types of usually dry product. Like, say you wanted to use grain and ore on the same ship. Very unlikely, because one of them's a very dirty product. You could do that having two separate hulls of a ship. Other break bulk, though, will go on what you would call a ro-ro ship, or a roll-on, roll-off ship, where there's a ramp that actually goes up into the ship. And so, say you have a bunch of cars, could be considered break bulk in that case, a bunch of tractors, large tractors that don't fit inside containers. So it would look like, essentially, a parking lot on the lower decks of a ship.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of I actually worked for a company like that, and I was in charge of stowage. So I stowed a number of break bulk cargoes, and it's interesting. It's the biggest Tonka set that you'll ever see.
Wow. Do they use the same cranes that they put the containers on the ship with to load those? Or it depends. It could vary.
They will use the crane. They will use the same gantry cranes that you'll see pretty much at any place, at any of the ports. You'll see the gantry cranes. If it's an open top, if you can actually attach a wire rig to the corner castings. Otherwise, they'll actually drive, something like a tractor would be driven up a ramp, or it could be loaded on a flat rack and then driven up there and then run down a ramp from the flat rack or trailer onto the actual deck of the ship. A lot of different ways you can do it.
So we've also got OOG, which is out of gauge, which you had mentioned. And so you have a 40-foot container, you have a 20-foot container, but they have a set amount of dimensions.
Yes.
Not everything's going to fit in that. We've all seen things that can't be broken down. They're much bigger than a 40-foot container. So
Like
what
a
do we do?
boat.
Yeah.
If you have say you have something like a tractor or a boat and you want to ship it, sometimes you're going to use an open top, sometimes you're going to use a flat rack. Either way, you want something that you're not constricted by side walls or roofs. When dealing with the out-of-gauge cargo, like we mentioned, if it's super heavy, you're going to use a crane to load it up onto either a flat rack or an open top. And in those cases, there won't be anything stowed on top of them. So your out-of-gauge cargo actually, when shipping, actually takes up more than one container space on a vessel, which is why that is typically done. If it's in a containerized ship, it's typically done how many container spots are quote-unquote blown by having an out-of-gauge piece of cargo. If it's on a roll-on, roll-off ship, a lot of times it's based on the cubic meters again, your CBMs.
Got you. We got RF, reefer. That's a refrigerated container.
Ooh.
Those are
perishables?
Perishables, used in perishables, frozen fish, frozen vegetables.
Heck yeah.
Blood.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Haemonetics, the blood people.
Yeah. Medical supplies, medical bio waste.
Oh yeah. I worked for a company and we shipped a lot of cadavers down to Puerto Rico for medical students, for the medical hospital, for the medical schools down in the islands.
Wow.
It was creepy, man. You were always terrified because if something went wrong and you have to crack open a piece of a cargo container for the Customs and Border Patrol guys, you pray to God it's not that one. I don't care how tough you are. That's a creepy container to open.
You ever read the book Devil in the White City?
No, Kristen told me it was fantastic though.
It's very good. It's kind of like a fictional bio kind of thing. It's about the Chicago World's Fair as well as the serial killer H.H. Holmes. Yes. And he had this murder mansion and he would kill people in his vault by, suffocating them, but he'd also torture people. But one of his victims, he suffocated him in the vault and then stripped all of their skin off and sold their skeleton to a university.
Interesting.
Yeah, well, back then they didn't have cadaver reefers, floating down the Atlantic. So they would have to either dig up bodies and universities would buy them off the black market. No questions asked.
If this sounded interesting to you, you can check out The Devil in the White City on www.audible.com.
/ the shipping pod. Well, it's audibletrial.com / the shipping pod.
I did not do that well.
If you want them to get it for free.
I want you to get it for free.
And a free 30-day trial.
I want them to get it for free, and I want a 30-day trial, is what I'm saying. Everything I've said up to this point has been true, but I was incorrect about the Audible sign.
What else we got? DG, we got Dangerous Goods.
Heck yeah. Applying to the MSDS.
Yeah.
Here you go. Just trying to make a callback here for you.
Why not? We get the FCL and the LCL. That's full container load or less than container load. You have a full container load when you have your own 20 or your own 40.
Indubitably, sir. Indubitably.
When you get LCL, you could be sharing with multiple consignees. You most likely are.
Exactly. It's like having it's like sharing an apartment.
Kind of is.
There you go.
Kind of is. When freights are really low, too, the LCL market gets kind of tough because just start booking a 20. Why in the hell not? Or a 40.
Indeed. Indeed. What else you got, sir?
Let's see. We did out of gauge already. POD, point of delivery. We said that was a crossover one.
Mm-hmm.
Some insurance terms. DV, you have your declared value. LCR, limited carrier risk. OR, owner's risk.
Yes, sir. Actually, neither one of those. I am completely ignorant when it comes to the insurance stuff.
Yeah?
I'm aware of it, but I am not well versed.
Wow.
We
might
should do a podcast on that just so I can learn about it.
I'll have to, maybe we'll have my dad on as a guest.
Ooh,
Former
that's
vice
right.
president of Roanoke Marine Insurance.
That's right. We got people right here in the neighborhood.
Yeah, and if he won't come, we can get old Ricky Bridges.
Ricky Bridges.
He can talk to us about insurance because neither you or I are specialists on that.
I would go so far as to say I'm ignorant to it.
Yeah, I could do about a 5-minute podcast on cargo insurance.
Very good, sir. Very good.
But I think that's about it for, the freight basic terms. I think we covered the basics that people would need to know without inundating them too much. Maybe next week we'll do the Inco terms just to kind of put these back to back, and it'll give something.
Yeah.
And we can also, if we miss something, we can bring it in.
Well, I highly encourage anybody out there that sees one that we blatantly missed. Please let us know. You can hit us up at the Shipping Pod on Instagram. That's how I like people to contact me, via Instagram.
Really?
Yes, I really
That's your
do.
favorite place to get a message from?
I do. I know we also have the Twitter.
Yeah, that's at the Shipping Pod as well. The shippingpod@gmail.com.
Exactly. I mean, you can do that one, but I say go out there in the middle of it.
And
Run right out into the middle of Instagram and do it.
You're already listening to us, but we're in a number of places. So if you have a favorite podcast app like TuneIn Radio, I actually just filled out our application for them. We'll be on TuneIn Radio in 24 hours.
Nice.
We're on Stitcher. We're on SoundCloud. We're on Libsyn, which is our homepage, theshippingpod.libsyn.com.
Oh, heck yeah.
And iTunes, please review and rate the show.
Absolutely. Get out there, people. Rate the show. Let us know. Let us know what you're thinking. I got to tell you, we've gotten some good feedback.
We sure have.
And can I do a big shout out to Jessica H?
Sure.
Jessica H. She gave us high words, said, love the show. Let's go to the top. I'm all for it. I like it. And she even sent her contact information. I'm going to reach out. I want to talk to Jessica H. I want to get some live feedback, man.
I spoke to her on the phone the other day.
What?
Oh, she's a lovely girl.
Awesome.
Yeah.
You know what she's also doing? Pushing us into Iowa. She contacted a friend of hers in Iowa. We haven't seen it yet. It hasn't happened, but I'm very positive. I have high hopes for Jessica.
I'm keeping an eye out for it.
Iowa, you are on notice.
You got any events?
Oh, we got events, man.
All right, shoot some events at me.
So we got events here coming up. I'm trying to do a little bit in chronological order, as it were. One of the ones, we mentioned it previously last week, but we didn't have the detail on it here. 17th TPM Annual Conference is a big Trans-Pacific conference out there in Long Beach, California. Super expensive, but from what I hear, all the big players will be there. It's February 26th through March 1st. I hear good things about this. I have never been to this one. I want to go to it. It's a tough one because it's West Coast based and it's right here in the middle of a busy time of year for anyone working in the import business, but I hear such good things about this as being informational as well as super fun. So anyone who's out in that area who feels froggy in the transportation world, get out there. I also have the North American Seafood Show, which will be coming up March 19th through the 21st at the Boston Convention and Expo Center right here in our own Boston, Massachusetts. I also give this one high marks because I think it's a good one for direct sales for anyone that's in the carrier or MVO business. You'll have key people there. If you're also a buyer of any kind and you want to be involved in the seafood business, you'll have major players there. You can find a little something for everybody there. It's well documented, it's well attended, and the parties are fantastic. And we actually have a friend of the podcast listening out in the West Coast who works for one of the major seafood importer-exporters. And she likes the show so much, I was thinking, hey, maybe we'll ask her about some seafood and some perishable stuff as we get close to that.
Yeah, we'd love to have some guests on. We have some plans in motion to have them on. I don't want to announce anyone yet,
Indeed.
but they're right there.
We're on the cusp.
We're on the cusp. They're there in the holding pen, just ready to be unleashed upon the world.
And do you have any other ones there? My apologies if I went out of chronological order, but I thought I was doing that fluidly.
I don't have anything super new. I got February 28th, the 23rd Annual International Business Forum and Networking Event.
I knew I missed one, yeah.
Yeah, that's 5:30 to 8:30 at Morgan Lewis in wonderful Boston, Massachusetts.
Mm-hmm.
And April 11th, obviously 21st Annual Northeast Trade and Transportation Conference.
TNT.
It's from April 11th to the 13th. TNT, it's dynamite.
Exactly. Is TNT the one that does the Law and Order with the dun-dun?
TNT, did they do... It was USA that used to have silk stockings.
Yes. Ooh, which one?
TNT had like WCW on it, and...
TNT had a lot, yeah.
Yeah, it did. Movie of the Week, was Jim Bob Briggs on there, or was he TBS?
That was TBS.
Remember Dinner in a Movie?
Yeah. Yes.
Beans and Cornbread?
Yes.
That was a good show.
Oh, that was good. Man, they need to bring some of that back.
Why don't they do shows anymore with a host? They used to have like a comedian that would do Friday night movie.
They still do. Okay, they still do occasionally on TBS, but it's less comedic and more like they're just sitting there. Like they'll have. There's one that has a lady that sits on like the front stoop of a building and she talks to one of the guys that was in the show. And then they have another one where they're sitting there and they're talking to someone who's somehow affiliated with the show, but it's not funny. They're just sitting there and they ask them, they're like, oh, what was it like to make a movie? And the person usually says something like, oh, it was a great creative experience, blah, blah, blah. I like Dinner in a Movie because they would kick in like, oh, fun fact. John Travolta's only 4'11", ha ha ha, or something. I mean, that's not true, but you get where I'm going with this.
I get where you're going with that. Sorry, John Travolta. I didn't mean to do a drive-by on you.
Yeah.
He's been brought up.
I love John Travolta. I don't know why. I don't even know why I picked him.
He's been brought up multiple times.
Hey, I'm a huge John Travolta fan. I loved him in...
Michael?
Yes, I did. But also, what was the one he did with Samuel L. Jackson? They were Army Rangers. He was undercover. I want to say it was not Rules of Engagement. Basic. I loved it. That movie, Basic, was great. Underrated movie. Check it out.
Face Off.
Obviously, yes. Yeah. I mean, that's an easy one to go to.
Face Off?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I liked, I gotta tell you, Face Off, Nick Cage, and I would watch Face Off 2, by the way. If they found a way to either do a prequel or something with that, I would watch that.
I love how preposterous the entire movie was, just because, and the most preposterous thing wasn't that they switched face, it's that their body types were completely different.
Yeah, well, they explained that. There was science in that.
Was it really?
Used lasers, and they did things they did a whole computer module. I mean,
like
it doesn't make any sense, but yes, they did. They did make an effort. They gave a nod to science.
So the director is looking at the script and he's like, no, we gotta put a scene in here that explains this away.
Yeah. And I don't know, who's the girl, the female lead that was Castor Troy's love interest?
I don't know.
His baby mama, as it were. She was also in Showgirls.
Yeah.
I don't know who she was. Beautiful, though. What underrated actress. Oh, I'm sorry, we got into the banter. We have a quick update there is that we actually did not attend the Northeastern University Supply Chain Expo.
Snowed out.
We up here had mini blizzards going on, and probably rightfully so. Safely, they chose to cancel the event. We will keep you updated, though, because we've actually been in contact with our friends over at Northeastern. We may do something informal, and if we do something informal for that, we will definitely bring the shipping pod to them, and we will speak with some Northeastern people while we're there.
Just wanted to do a couple quick shout-outs to a couple countries, too.
Yeah, buddy.
So we are now heard in the Russian Federation, China, Germany, Italy, India, Sweden, Zambia, Bahrain, Turkey, Japan, Canada, and of course, the United States of America.
Was Mexico on the list?
No Mexicans have listened to us yet. Although, you know what?
Donde estás?
There is this big thing on here on our stats that says other regions.
Ooh.
And those could be people on VPNs or something. I know a lot of people in China.
I bet you it's probably people from Antarctica, on research boats and stuff.
It could be listeners in China, too. I know a lot of people in China use VPNs to get out because of the very closed system that they have there.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. Virtual private network.
Very good. I did not know that's what that stood for. I knew what it was, but I didn't know that's what that stood for.
Just trying to educate you, man.
I got to tell you, I'm enjoying our recording sessions more and more because of that. I'm learning so much.
Real quick, big Valentine's Day plans? I know after our date here is over.
No big Valentine's plans. We've had me and the little lady have been doing a bit of traveling lately, and we've been spending a little more money than anticipated, and so we decided we're gonna go low key she's going to be coming off a 12-hour shift, so I'm sure she probably appreciates me leaving her the heck alone and going to bed.
Well, I have a suite already picked out.
Ooh.
An editing suite.
Ooh.
Because I gotta edit this show, man. Man, Valentine's Day, we're married. We celebrate our anniversary. Valentine's Day is such a first year or two of dating.
Yeah, it's
Kinda
a
holiday.
Valentine's Day is similar to the way I look at St. Patrick's Day is amateur night for drinkers. Valentine's Day is amateur night for
Lovers.
Yeah, it's just you don't need Valentine's Day. Plus, it comes on the heels of Christmas, and in my case, it's like Christmas, her birthday, Valentine's Day, our anniversary. I mean, it's a I gotta tell you, January through May is a whack and a whack and a whack.
Yeah, we gotta like CABAF all these holidays. We just gotta cluster them all together.
I'm gonna Incoterm all the holidays. I want straight X-Works.
Yeah.
No, I mean I want DDP. Roll it all into one.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Ryan.
Can I give a quick nod that was an Incoterm joke, and I think that's gonna go down as the first ever solid Incoterm joke.
Let's hear it repeated through the cities, mountains, and valleys.
Tell your friends, people. Tell your friends. Timmy, take us out.
For Ryan Dooley, Tim Dooner saying goodbye from the Shipping Pod.
Oh, Valentine,
Hey, man,
one day you are mine and evermore to me.
We got rolling. Things were
Valentine, 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 oh, Valentine.